Have you ever ordered a gyro, a plate of baklava, or a bowl of tzatziki, and assumed you were eating something purely, unmistakably Greek? You're not alone, and you're also not quite right. Today we're pulling back the curtain on 10 foods the world has confidently labeled Greek for generations, and tracing them back to where they actually began: Persia, the Ottoman Empire, the Levant, and corners of the ancient world most people never think to credit. Welcome to the Savory Scroll. Let's unroll this one. We start with the dish most people would bet everything on: the gyro, that spinning vertical cone of seasoned meat, shaved thin and wrapped in warm pita, with tomatoes, onions, and tzatziki, feels like the single most Greek food experience imaginable. But the cooking method itself, meat stacked and roasted vertically on a rotating spit, has a much older and more contested lineage. The technique is widely traced to the Ottoman Empire, where it became known as döner kebab, meaning rotating meat in Turkish, developed and popularized in the 19th century. Greece adopted the vertical spit method sometime in the 20th century, gave it a Greek name derived from the word gyros, meaning turn or circle, and built an entirely distinct culinary identity around it, with pita, tzatziki, and Mediterranean seasoning. So while the modern gyro, as Greeks make and love it today, is a genuine Greek culinary creation, the fundamental technique it's built on was borrowed and adapted from Ottoman Turkish cooking, not invented in Greece from scratch. Baklava might be the most fiercely contested dessert on this entire list, claimed at various points by Greek, Turkish, and broader Middle Eastern culinary traditions, all with genuine historical arguments behind them. The earliest documented ancestor of layered, nut-filled pastry dates back to the Assyrian Empire, where cooks layered thin bread dough with chopped nuts and honey. That basic concept traveled and evolved for centuries across Persian, Byzantine, and eventually Ottoman kitchens. The paper-thin phyllo dough technique, most associated with modern baklava, is generally credited to Ottoman palace kitchens in Istanbul during the 15th and 16th centuries, refined by professional pastry chefs working specifically for the Sultan's court. Greece, as part of the Ottoman Empire for roughly 4 centuries, absorbed baklava into its own culinary tradition and developed distinctly Greek variations, often using walnuts instead of pistachios and honey syrup instead of sugar syrup. But the technique of paper-thin layered phyllo dough that defines the dessert originated in Ottoman Turkish kitchens, not ancient Greek ones. Moussaka, that rich, layered casserole of eggplant, spiced ground meat, and creamy bechamel sauce, feels deeply rooted in Greek home cooking, and in many ways it genuinely is, but its origins trace back through the Arab world and Ottoman Empire first. Eggplant-based layered dishes appear throughout Middle Eastern and Levantine cuisine for centuries before anything resembling modern moussaka shows up in Greek kitchens. The word moussaka itself is derived from the Arabic word Moussaka, meaning chilled or layered, which entered Ottoman Turkish cuisine and then spread throughout the Balkans and Eastern Mediterranean. The specific version of moussaka most people know today, topped with a thick French-style bechamel sauce, was actually formalized by a Greek chef named Nikolaos Tselementes in the early 20th century, who had trained in French culinary techniques and deliberately added the bechamel layer to elevate the dish for upper-class Greek dining. So the bechamel-topped moussaka the world associates with Greece is a relatively modern 20th century Greek invention, built on top of a much older Arab and Ottoman layered eggplant tradition. Tzatziki, the cool, garlicky yogurt and cucumber sauce, served alongside nearly every Greek dish, has genuinely ancient roots, just not necessarily Greek ones exclusively. Strained yogurt mixed with cucumber, garlic, and herbs appears across an enormous swath of the ancient and medieval world, from Persian and Central Asian cultures where fermented yogurt was already a dietary staple thousands of years before it became associated with Mediterranean cuisine, through the Ottoman Empire, where a nearly identical preparation called kachuk remains a staple dish in modern Turkey to this day. Yogurt-based cucumber sauces show up under different names across Iran, India, and the broader Middle East as well. Greece's version, tzatziki, is a genuine regional variation with its own specific seasoning profile, particularly its heavier use of dill and olive oil. But the underlying concept of yogurt blended with cucumber predates Greek culinary history by a significant margin and likely originated somewhere in Persia or Central Asia. Dolmades, those small parcels of grape leaves stuffed with rice, herbs, and sometimes ground meat, feel like quintessential Greek taverna food. But the technique of stuffing grape leaves and vegetables has much deeper roots in the Ottoman and broader Middle Eastern culinary tradition. The word dolma itself comes directly from Turkish, meaning stuffed or filled, and stuffed vegetable dishes appear extensively throughout Ottoman palace cuisine, spreading from Istanbul across the empire's vast territory, which at its height included modern-day Greece, Egypt, the Levant, and the Balkans. Variations of stuffed grape leaves are claimed today by Turkish, Lebanese, Armenian, Syrian, and Greek cuisine alike, each with their own specific seasoning and preparation style, but the foundational technique and even the name trace back to Ottoman Turkish kitchens rather than originating independently in ancient Greece. Feta cheese occupies a strange middle position in this discussion, because Greece does hold legal protection over the name feta under European Union geographical indication law, meaning only cheese produced in specific regions of Greece using traditional methods can officially be labeled feta today. However, the broader tradition of brined white cheese made from sheep's or goat's milk predates that legal protection by thousands of years and appears across the ancient Mediterranean and Middle East long before any exclusive Greek claim existed. Historical and archaeological evidence for brined cheese production appears in ancient Mesopotamia, and similar brined white cheeses have been produced independently across the Balkans, the Levant, and Central Asia for centuries under different regional names. So while modern feta is legally and legitimately a protected Greek product today, the underlying cheese-making technique of brining soft white cheese is a far older, more widely distributed Mediterranean and Middle Eastern practice that Greece didn't invent in isolation. Spanakopita, the flaky, spinach and feta-filled phyllo pastry beloved across Greek bakeries and home kitchens, runs into the exact same phyllo dough origin story as baklava. The pastry-making technique itself, paper-thin layered dough brushed with butter or oil, traces back to Ottoman Turkish palace kitchens, refined over centuries by professional pastry chefs working within the empire. Greece absorbed and adapted that technique during centuries of Ottoman rule, applying it to savory fillings like spinach and feta rather than sweet nut and honey mixtures, creating Spanakopita as a distinctly Greek dish built on a distinctly non-Greek pastry foundation. The filling and flavor profile of Spanakopita is genuinely, uniquely Greek, but the phyllo technique underneath it is borrowed. Hummus is where this list gets genuinely contentious, because most people today correctly associate hummus with Levantine and broader Middle Eastern cuisine rather than Greek cuisine specifically. But it's worth including here because Greek restaurants worldwide serve hummus so consistently as part of a standard meze spread that many diners, especially outside the Mediterranean region, have come to mentally file it under Greek food without a second thought. Chickpeas mashed with tahini, olive oil, lemon, and garlic have deep, well-documented roots in Levantine and Egyptian culinary history, with historical references to chickpea-based pastes appearing in medieval Arab cookbooks centuries before hummus became a fixture of the broader Mediterranean mezze table that Greek restaurants adopted and popularized internationally alongside their own dishes. Souvlaki, skewered and grilled pieces of meat, feels almost too simple to have a contested origin story, but skewer grilled meat is one of the oldest and most widely distributed cooking techniques in the entire ancient world, appearing independently across Mesopotamia, Persia, and the broader Eastern Mediterranean region long before classical Greek civilization codified it into a specific culinary identity. Interestingly, archaeological evidence does show that ancient Greeks were skewering and grilling meat as far back as the Mycenaean era, with actual bronze skewers and cooking implements discovered at archaeological sites, giving Greece a genuinely legitimate ancient claim to this particular technique. However, the broader concept of skewer-grilled meat as a cooking method predates and extends well beyond ancient Greece specifically, appearing in Persian and Middle Eastern culinary traditions under names like kebab, which shares the same fundamental cooking logic and in some historical linguistics research may share etymological roots stretching back to ancient Near Eastern cooking vocabulary. Greek coffee, That thick, strong, unfiltered coffee, served in small cups with grounds settled at the bottom, carries Greek directly in its name across menus worldwide. But the exact same preparation method, down to the specific brewing technique using a small, long-handled pot called a sezve or briki, is also called Turkish coffee, Armenian coffee, Bosnian coffee, and Arabic coffee, depending entirely on which country you're standing in when you order it. The technique of brewing finely ground coffee with sugar directly in water, without filtering out the grounds, originated in the Ottoman Empire during the 16th century, after coffee itself had already spread from Ethiopia and Yemen through Ottoman trade routes into Istanbul's coffeehouse culture, which became famous throughout the empire and beyond. Greece adopted the exact same brewing method during centuries of Ottoman rule, and, after a long and genuinely tense period of political friction between Greece and Turkey throughout the 20th century, rebranded the identical drink as Greek coffee for nationalistic and cultural identity reasons, rather than because the preparation method itself was independently invented in Greece. Pita bread, the soft, slightly puffed flatbread that accompanies gyros, dips, and meze spreads across nearly every Greek meal, has genuinely ancient roots that stretch back thousands of years before Greek civilization as we understand it existed. Flatbreads leaven just enough to create a characteristic pocket appear throughout the ancient Near East, with some of the earliest archaeological and historical evidence pointing to Mesopotamia and the broader Levant region. The word pita itself is understood by most linguists to derive from ancient Greek, referring generally to flat cakes or pies, which does give Greece a legitimate linguistic claim to the name. But the actual bread-making technique, using natural fermentation and high heat to create a pocketed flatbread, predates and extends well beyond ancient Greek civilization, appearing independently across the ancient Middle East as one of humanity's oldest bread traditions. So here's the pattern running through nearly every single item on this list. Greece spent roughly 4 centuries as part of the Ottoman Empire, from the mid-15th century until Greek independence in the early 19th century, and that centuries-long cultural and culinary overlap left an enormous, often unacknowledged imprint on what the world now considers classic Greek cuisine. Gyro, baklava, dolmades, moussaka, and Greek coffee all carry direct linguistic or technical DNA traced back to Ottoman Turkish kitchens, absorbed during that long period of shared history, and later reshaped into distinctly Greek versions with their own regional identity. That's not a criticism of Greek cuisine. Every great food culture on Earth borrows, adapts, and refines. What Greece did with these borrowed techniques is genuinely its own accomplishment. Distinct seasoning profiles, distinct regional variations, and a culinary identity strong enough that the rest of the world now associates these dishes with Greece first, and their actual points of origin barely at all. If this changed the way you'll look at your next Greek takeout order, let us know in the comments which dish on this list surprised you the most. And don't forget to subscribe to the Savory Scroll, because next time, we're unrolling another archive. This time tracing 10 foods you think are Italian, but aren't.